Hello and welcome to Coop's Corner. I'm your host, Cooper Petagna. Week 8 of college football is in the books, and it had a little bit of everything, including upsets, if you would call it that. But how about Vandy? Are they a legitimate college football playoff contender? We'll take a look at them after their big win against LSU. We'll also talk about what's next for the Florida Gators after the Gators have decided to move on from head coach Billy Napier. The next question: is Miami cooked? A Friday night loss to Louisville. We'll examine what's next for the Hurricanes, and also who are the best four teams in college football right now? That is a question that needs to be answered, and including questions that need to be answered. We'll also get to a Q&A mailbag at the end of the show. But guys, first and foremost, I want to thank you for joining us, and make sure to like and subscribe, where you can find us on the Cooper Petagna YouTube channel at youtube.com/CoopsPetag. You can also find me on all the socials at Cooper Petagna. We set a goal for the end of October for 300 subscribers on the YouTube account. We are getting very close. We are inching our way forward. That's our little update. We want to get to 300 by the end of October. All the Coops cronies out there, hats off to you. You guys have been unbelievable. So I said it. We have a loaded show, and college football right now is a little bit of a domino effect, right? There are teams up in the top 10 that you wouldn't expect. Teams like Indiana, teams like Vanderbilt, teams like Penn State, teams like Florida are looking for a new head coach. So let's start there with the Florida Gators, as they are moving on from Billy Napier after 4 seasons in Gainesville. 22-23 record. That includes 3-4 this season. 40-12 at UL Lafayette when he came over from the Raging Cajuns to Florida. But guess what? It didn't translate. 0-14 record against ranked opponents on the road. That is not going to get it done. So where does Florida turn after Billy Napier? That is the big question. And let's kind of diagnose some of the symptoms as well. For Napier and Florida, it seems like they did almost everything correct outside of win football games. And what I mean by that is, over the last 3 cycles, recruiting-wise, Florida had a top 13 class. Now, you can argue in this day and age that it needs to be even higher than that. It needs to be in the top 10, maybe even closer to the top 5. And I wouldn't push back on that whatsoever. But in terms of the infrastructure and the process, systems, and checks and balances that Billy Napier brought to Gainesville from day one, upgrading what was a pretty archaic process or lack of process in place from his predecessor in Dan Mullen, Florida fans got to thank Billy Napier for that. And I know that sounds a little crazy and a little bit of counterintuitive, but it sets up the next coach exceptionally well, because Florida is so invested in their infrastructure and their support staff and what they have with Katie Turner and what she's done from an on-campus standpoint. Jacob LaFrance will more than likely not be there, but in terms of what he's done overseeing the high school side for the Florida Gators over the last couple of years, this is a team that's extremely talented, just could not get it to translate on the field, right? And you look at Florida in terms of the roster makeup, this is a team that's almost built 80% through the high school ranks, only 20%, a little over 20% via the transfer portal. So this was a process-driven agenda for Billy Napier. And I think that's where this thing kind of went awry, right? It was, okay, we're going to build the foundation, we're going to recruit through the high school ranks, but the level of urgency and win now that a place like Florida requires didn't match up with Billy Napier's timeline, especially when you showed some promise last year with a young DJ Lagway beating LSU, beating Ole Miss, both at home, being able to climb to an 8-5 season. All the expectations coming into this year dead and gone after losing to South Florida in week 2. So Billy Napier out, along with a hefty buyout for the Florida Gators. So where could they turn next? And this is really interesting, right? In terms of the names that are being thrown around, you're already reading it already on message boards out there. Favorite time of the year for some people out there. And it's a lot of fun, quite honestly, even though people are losing their jobs, to speculate. Here's where I'm at. I'm going to give you a couple names, but it really boils down to 2 of them. I think this comes down to Lane Kiffin, head coach at Ole Miss, and Eli Drinkwitz, head coach at Missouri, because Florida, to me, the systematic problem is they're missing swag, and they're missing confidence, and they're missing offensive prowess, right? In this day and age of college football, it's less about the process and the CEO, which is really Billy Napier, and it's more becoming a lot closer to the NFL. Are you coming from the Sean McVay tree? Are you Kevin O'Connell? Are you Zach Taylor? Are you one of those guys, right? Are you going to be one of those offensive play callers who has the quarterback that can get the most out of them? And week to week, how do you give your team the best opportunity to win? And that's not to say that we won't see losses like Alabama losing to Florida State in week 1 occur. That will happen in college football. But coaches now are being compensated for their ability to develop their team week to week and put them in the best position to win. That's it. Kalen DeBoer has done a phenomenal job of doing that. Dan Lanning has done a phenomenal job of doing that. Kurt Cignetti, maybe one of the best in the country in doing that. Kirby Smart, we'll talk about the Georgia Bulldogs a little bit later in the show. But that's the job. It's the schematic piece balanced with the checks and balances of talent identification and talent acquisition. And then it's the psychological piece of it as well. Okay, when things don't go your way, if you're Miami, you lose to Louisville on a Friday night, you have all these expectations. Can you bounce back? It's a week-to-week job. How do we let the losses not compound on us, right? And for Florida, that's exactly what happened. 3-4 on the season. They beat Mississippi State. Great play by Mike Burrow to get him out of that game. That could have been another very difficult loss for Billy Napier. But my point is, in terms of what teams are looking for now, I think it used to be, can this guy recruit? Can he build relationships? Is this the type of guy that we want representing our program? And what we'll see in the future of college football is shifting towards, does he have an offensive identity? Can he get the most of my roster right now? And what does it look like year to year that he can sell to potential recruits and players in the transfer portal? So let's break it down. Lane Kiffin, to me, turned down Auburn last year, or so it's said. That one was enticing. We heard the whole story about how his daughter got involved, wanted to keep him at Ole Miss. Jimmy Sexton, the big power broker, the biggest agent in all of college football, if you don't know him, works at CAA, former agent of Nick Saban. This is the guy who makes the money moves, right? He's arguably one of the more powerful people in all of college football. I think Lane has his eyes set on Florida. I think this is a job that he's circled for quite some time. And if you look at it and take a step back and say, okay, what are the cases for staying at Ole Miss? What are the cases for staying at Florida? Let's talk about Ole Miss first. One, he's built up Ole Miss into a program that's one of the most respectable programs in the country. He's done a phenomenal job via the transfer portal. If you were to look at Ole Miss and how they are broken down from a roster composition standpoint, almost 55% of their roster is via the transfer portal. That's hefty. That is hefty. That is year to year, okay? So now it is living in the world of, I got to go to the portal in free agency every single year. And they've gone out, they've done a phenomenal job. That's where Trinidad Chambliss has come from. That's where majority of their offensive line has come from. That's where the majority of their receiving corps has come from. That's where the majority of their defense has come from. The issue with that is not the money part, but that's a moving target and a very difficult target to consistently hit year in and year out. So for Ole Miss, I think the fact that Lane has kind of billed himself as the portal king, they've done unbelievable scouting. You go back to Matt Lindsay, who was the general manager there, to Austin Thomas, who's now the GM at LSU, to now Billy Glasscock, who came over from Texas. They haven't skipped a beat. And that's a lot of credit to Lane, his coaching staff as well, as they've had a lot of coaching turnover on both sides of the ball. But Ole Miss has now become a destination school for kids looking for another opportunity to maximize their ability before they go to the NFL. I think Ole Miss, could be wrong here, had 8 players drafted last year. All 8 were transfer portal players. That's insane. So that's the way they live there at Ole Miss, and Lane's doing that better than anybody. Second part of that, it's a cush job. His daughter is there. He is in the second part of his coaching career where he has seemed to learn from a lot of the mistakes that he made when he was younger. He has greater perspective. There's all that other stuff out there, him doing hot yoga every morning and kind of keep himself sane and centered. But can Lane Kiffin win a championship at Ole Miss? That is the question. Another difficult loss for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. On the road, scoring their first 5 possessions against Georgia and Kirby Smart. And you're looking at Ole Miss, you're like, this is the year. Get outscored 17-0 in the fourth quarter, lose that game. And to me, I look at that game and I say, is that foreshadowing with Lane moving on? Maybe it is. Because does Ole Miss have the depth to go toe-to-toe against Georgia for 60 minutes, especially on either side of the line of scrimmage? And Georgia's got the depth, especially in their front seven. They're one of the most talented front sevens in the country. I know it hasn't looked like a Georgia traditional defense, especially with what Lane and Trinidad Chambliss did to him last week. But my point is, if you're Lane and you're looking at recruiting the state of Mississippi, recruiting almost primarily out of the transfer portal, and then you look at Florida, who Billy Napier, it wasn't really a talent question, built his team up almost 80% out of the high school ranks. And Florida and Texas, year to year, are going to go back and forth on the most prospects drafted in the NFL. Not to mention you have that whole Southeast region. Georgia as well, one of the top 4 states in terms of producing NFL talent. And this always comes down to belief. Do I believe I'm a national championship winning head coach? I believe Lane Kiffin believes that in his heart of hearts. Does he believe truly that he can win a national championship at Ole Miss? I don't know. I think that's probably what keeps him up at night. I think that he thinks if he went to Florida at this point of his career, knowing what he knows, understanding the landscape, everything that he's been through, everything that he's learned, I believe that he feels Florida would give him the best chance at winning a national championship. And Billy Napier did him some favors. That place is ready to go. From a resource standpoint, they are ready to go. They are primed. And Lane always makes those comments talking about, LSU paid the highest dollar for those 2 DBs, A.J. Halsey, Mansour Delane. I think he's tired of being outbid it. Ole Miss has done a phenomenal job. They've given him everything that you could possibly ask for and more. I think they're going to continue to pursue him to try to keep him home. But this is Lane Kiffin or bust for Florida. And I believe that. And I think Lane, in my heart of hearts, knows that this is the train he has to hop on now at age 50 and go. And let's give it 10 years, and I can set this thing up. The other guy is Eli Drinkwitz, who oddly enough has the same exact roster composition as Ole Miss. 55% transfers, 45% high school. Missouri's done an unbelievable job, comparable to Ole Miss, giving Eli Drinkwitz everything that he could possibly imagine. He stays there long enough to probably build a statue of him. He's done a good job in the state of Missouri. You think about guys like Williams Winery, even though he's off in Nebraska. Luther Burden, probably a better example. What they've done via the transfer portal. Bo Pribula, Ahmad Hardy. Their offensive line, Caden Green, Keegan Trost, Kevin Coleman. They've done a phenomenal job. And that's kind of the new age of college football. It's kind of a year-to-year thing. How do you bridge that short-term with that long-term expectation? But every year, we got to be competitive. Billy was too long-term. Lane might be too short-term for his comfort. Florida says, let's mix and match here. I like it. We can give you the best of both worlds. And I wonder if Eli's thinking the same thing. Eli's got swag. Eli's got confidence. He left after 1 year at Appalachian State, went to Missouri and said, F it, let's go. Took him a little while, now they got it going. Guys got bravado. So if I'm Florida, I'm starting with those 2 guys because they hired Billy Napier out of the Sun Belt. That's why they call him Sun Belt Billy. Now they're saying, we want a guy that's been there, done that in this conference, understands this conference. And offensively gives us some juice because defensively, Florida hadn't been bad under Ron Roberts. Front 7, they look pretty good. They look exactly the way that Lane Kiffin or Eli Drinkwitz would want them to look like. Now, that being said, Drink's done a really good job with his front 7 in Missouri. Zion Young, Damon Wilson, they got pass rushers. But if I'm Florida, that's where it starts. That's pretty much where it ends. Other names out there, Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame. Call him for sure. Feel it out. Young, superstar, dynamic, but guess what? One game away from winning the national championship last year at Notre Dame. And it's about path too, right? At Notre Dame, it sets up well. You want to be in the meat grinder of the SEC? I think not. Dan Lanning, call him. Not sure he picks up. Other guys, Brent Key, Rhett Lashley out of the ACC, Kenny Dillingham out of the Big 12. Clark Lee, more of a process guy. Process works at a place like Vandy. Process at Florida, I don't know. G5 representation, John Summerall, got the chest. Alex Golish, got the chest. Other names have been, will be thrown around. Urban Meyer, John Gruden, James Franklin. James Franklin's come up a little bit. I think recency bias comes into this. I don't think he's hireable at Florida. Jed Fish, another guy, an alumni of Florida. I think Jed Fish got some legit stuff to him. But why don't you stay somewhere more than 24 months? Why don't you show me that you're capable of like building it out and taking a team to the CFP? It's like ADD in terms of job jumping. And I've been there before. Trust me, I was one of those guys. I was always chasing the next thing. If I could go back, be a little bit more timely, a little bit more conservative with it, make sure you're at the right spot. Last thing on this, Florida cannot afford to miss. And I expect them, the same AD who hired Billy Napier, to have an exact opposite reaction of what he did when he hired Billy all those years ago. Go get me a proven winner in this conference. So like I said, I think that is Lane, or I think that is Drink. And I think, quite honestly, it's Lane Kiffin at the end of the day. And I think Lane's going to take it. That's my gut. College football, great time to be alive. Great time to be a Coops crony as well. Like I said, make sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Coops Petagna. Also, if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you are listening in your car, if you're listening in your bed, you're staring up at the ceiling and you're wondering to yourself, hey, have I given Coops Corner a rating and a review? Because right now would be a really appropriate time to do that. Now, if you're driving, pull off to the side of the road, go to Sonic, maybe get a shake, and then put in the rating and review. Also on YouTube, drop comments on there. I was saying I want to do a mailbag. I want to get the cronies fired up. I want to get to 300 first. 300 by the end of October. I think we can do that. But guys, like I said, you guys are awesome. I appreciate you listening. And we're just going to try to keep growing this thing kind of step by step. We are process oriented over here. We don't have to win now, right? We're not in that bucket. We're like Clark Lee and gang. Speaking of Clark Lee and gang, how about those Vandy Commodores, right? And it begs the question after their win against top 10 LSU this weekend, is Vandy a legit threat to compete in the college football playoffs? That is the question. 6-1, best start since 1950. Beat LSU for the first time since 1990. 2 wins versus AP top 15 teams in the same season. First time ever. So the answer to that question is yes, but I want to address something first. I went to LSU. Most people who listen to this show know that, but if this is your first time listening, I'm an LSU alumni. I watch every LSU game. Proud advocate of the LSU program. I have people texting me, you can't lose to Vanderbilt. It's Vandy. I understand that level of thinking, but for somebody that does this for a living, let me explain this to you. Get that out of your mind. Get that out of your system. Because as long as Clark Lee is at Vanderbilt now with what we've seen, it's not just Vandy anymore. It's not just Vandy. It's like Clemsoning when Dabo got there and he completely changed the narrative. Clemsoning is not a thing anymore. They won 2 national championships. Vandy is not Vandy anymore. It's not, oh, it's Vandy. Understand something. Clark Lee, Barton Simmons have done a phenomenal job flipping this roster, especially in the trenches. One of the most difficult personnel jobs in the country. And these guys have been masterful with every single moment. From a 5-win season to beating Alabama last year to gaining momentum in their own state to gaining momentum in the transfer portal to making Vandy somewhat of a destination program for players inside the SEC that say, hold on, I can play in one of the country's most elite conferences, get a great degree, and get developed. They are selling something that hasn't been sold in quite some time at Vanderbilt, and they are doing it the right way. Offensive line made up of mostly transfers. Give them credit. They go out, they get Pavia, they get the offensive coordinator, they change the whole thing up. They say, hey, we got to critically think. We're Vanderbilt. We're not going to traditionally beat every school in this conference straight up. Guess what? They took some hits too. They lost guys in the portal, London Humphreys being one of those guys. You could go A.J. Swan being one of those guys. Go down the list. That seems like 10 years ago. And they bounced back with excellent scouting. Guys that fit them to a T. And guess what? They're going to take advantage of these moments as well. They're going to take advantage of a 6-1 start. They're going to take advantage of beating 2 top 15 teams inside their own conference for the first time ever. Clark Lee, when he got there, I'll never forget it, SEC Media Days, he came up there and he said, essentially, my goal is to win a national championship at Vandy. And everybody just kind of brushed that off and they kind of laughed. And he was dead serious. Deadpan looked at the camera. That was his goal. I was fortunate enough to run into Clark Lee at a hotel in December a few years ago. I introduced myself. He asked me to pull up a chair. I said, Coach, congrats on the season. Competitive, 5 wins. And he looked at me like he just wanted to throw me out of a window. His internal expectations for that place is higher than anybody's expectations outside of it. That's what you have to have. Belief. You have to have internal belief in yourself. And then you have to go out and you have to execute that vision 365 days out of the year. Even when it's hard, even when you're going up against adversity, even when the results aren't showing up. But you have to trust the process. These guys, Lee, Simmons, Beck, give them all credit. Phenomenal job, man. Phenomenal job. And they beat LSU, and it wasn't fluky. There's nothing fluky about it. Time of possession, 36-23. Took the air out of the freaking football. LSU, Blake Baker, one of the best units in the country, had no answers. Quarterback, crafty as hell, had no answers. Tight ends, great usage. Offensive line, effective, ran the ball when they needed to. Defense, got after Garrett Nussmeier. Gave up only 100 yards on the ground. Who wants to play Vandy right now? I mean, we're like, oh, the sweet Vandy, what a story. It's like, no, dude. They're legit. The head coach is legit. The quarterback is legit. The play callers on both sides are legit. They have legitimate guys. This is not just like a sweet parody story. And here's the other thing. Missouri, at home, game day, Eli Drinkwitz. Great opportunity. Next week, at Texas. I would take Vandy in that game right now. Auburn, Kentucky, both at home, and then they finish in Knoxville on the road. I think this team can win 4 out of their next 5 and represent the SEC in the college football playoff and be a legitimate factor in the playoffs because they have that belief and they have the players at premium positions. They have everything that you would want. And they beat LSU pretty handily. They beat South Carolina on the road. They had an opportunity to go up 2 possessions against Alabama early in that football game. And that will probably end up being a good thing for them ultimately at the end of the day. I don't want to play these guys. So I don't know how loud I need to yell it. But yes, these guys are legit, anchored down, stock up. Let's buy it. Let's go. Here to stay. Gut feel on Clark Lee. His name's going to get thrown around a lot. Oh, he's sexy. That's a shiny toy. Why would you want to be at Vandy? You can't win a national championship. Don't tell him that. He's here to stay. Love the juice, man. Talking about Vandy football fires me up. Diego Pavia fires me up. That guy's wild, by the way. You see the picture of him walking into the game. He had the ski mask on with the chains. Then post-game interview is like complete opposite. Just thanking God for humbling. That type of like bipolar quarterback, it's what we want, man. It's what college football is all about. All right, just a reminder, like and subscribe. Are the Miami Hurricanes cooked? Are they cooked? What the kids call cooked? What's that other term that the kids are using? No, I don't know. I heard it for the first time the other day, but let's stick with cooked. Is Miami cooked? Miami loses at home 24-21 on Friday, and it felt like one of those trap games, man. Rat poison. Everybody's buying Miami. Miami, number 2 ranked team, coming into this game on a Friday night. Jeff Brom, Louisville, veteran quarterback, Miller Moss, Chris Bell, absolute dog. Isaac Brown, absolute dog. Is Miami the most complete team in all of college football? This is the best Miami team I've seen in quite some time. Gassing them up. Jeff Brom, Louisville had other ideas. And guess what, man? I don't think Miami really played that bad. I thought this game was more about Louisville and their high-level execution offensively. The way that they executed on the ground with Isaac Brown, the way that they executed through the air, and Chris Bell taking advantage of some matchups. Jeff Brom's a salty play caller, man. There it goes. We're going back to the play calling. But Louisville played well. They earned this game. They won this game. Now for Miami, to that question, are they cooked in terms of their playoff aspirations? Is this team a legit contender in the college football playoff? Yes. Chin up. You control your own destiny, right? You look at the ACC, you got teams out there undefeated. Georgia Tech, Virginia, one of those teams. SMU as well. You get to play SMU here if you're Miami. So even though you're going to need a couple things to break in your favor to get to the conference championship in the ACC and win it and get the auto bid, I think an 11-1 Miami walks straight into the college football playoff. Here's the thing you can't do. You can't give up the line of scrimmage. If you're Miami and you're Mario Cristobal, your MO is what? It's your offensive line. Those are your guys. That is your DNA. That is your fiber. Your quarterback is a direct reflection of your DNA. And what I mean by that is when he is an accessory, when he is the complement, he can be a really effective quarterback. When you rush for 63 yards against Louisville, your quarterback can suffer the consequences of that poor performance running the football. 4 interceptions, what we saw. This first time Carson Beck has done that in his career. And Carson Beck, from a psychological standpoint, here's just my feel on it. You have to give him effectiveness on the ground in order to get the best version of him, which is under center, play action, let him spread it out, let him be in more comfortable situations, second, third, medium, short, than what they faced against Louisville on Friday night. Miami's got everything in front of them. Here's the thing, though. Who are you going to be? Are you going to be 9-0 Miami last year? Or are you going to be the Miami that lost 3 of the last 4 and didn't make it to the college football playoffs? Like that's a total mental, psychological warfare right now for Miami. They can look around and they can pout and they can say, oh, what a disappointment. Or You can take the luxury of a loss in this era of college football player and say, F it, let's rip it, and let's go. Let's play more free. We got it out, right? The expectations are high. People are talking about us like they haven't talked about us in a very long time. But who do we want to be? And here's what's on the schedule. Stanford just beat Florida State. You got them at home. Then you're in Dallas at SMU. Testy, but great. We want to be a national champion. Those are the games we're going to have to win. Syracuse got us last year. Let's kick their ass. At Virginia Tech, no head coach. Let's take care of business. At Pitt, Pat Narduzzi. Good. Good. Tune-up. Let's go. Tough game. Let's go. Like, come on, Miami. That's the mentality. Louisville gave you one. They hit you on the chin, man. What are you going to do? And I talked about Miami earlier in the season being given the opportunity to close out teams that are equal to them. A team like Louisville, when you have that opportunity, you have to do that. But when you don't run the ball, you lose a turnover battle, you lose TOP, that's tough. So it's getting back to doing the little things, reestablishing your identity, and getting back to who you are. Miami is best. Mario Cristobal is best when he's the aggressor. So I don't hate this for Miami. I think he likes being the dog. Lead dog is a little bit different of a chair. Underdog, good. Counting us out, good. Natural motivation, good. Everybody thinks we're not the team they thought we were, good. Fly under the radar, handle business, win your next 5. Show the world you are who we once thought you were. Two-loss, non-ACC champ, not good enough. Not good enough. Not good enough to make the college football playoff. And don't talk to me about the wins earlier in the year, the resume, this type of stuff. It's all in front of you. If you're Miami, the way that this team is built, the way that they're constructed, what you have on both sides of the ball, win out. Play your best ball now. That has to be the conversation in that building at Coral Gables. It's on us. We control what we can control. Good. Good. It's fired up, man. Clark Lee fires me up. Mario Cristobal fires me up. I'm over here giving like post-game speeches. Like I'm back in a building. Let me hear it one time. Fires me up. Let me hear it one time. Like and subscribe. YouTube channel. Leave a comment, ask a question. I'll get to it. We got a mailbag at the end of the show. That's what I'm looking forward to. Here's a question. Who are the best 4 teams in college football? Is it relevant right now? I don't know. But we just got done, what is it, week 8? We should have a pretty good handle on things, all right? So here's how the AP has it. Ohio State, number 1. Indiana, number 2. Texas A&M, undefeated, the last remaining undefeated team in the SEC. Aggies at number 3. Alabama at number 4. Georgia at number 5. Here's how Coop has it. Ohio State, number 1. Indiana, number 2. Alabama, number 3. Oregon, number 4. First 2 out. Georgia and Texas A&M. And to me, it's all about best assortment of talent, quarterback position, and who are the play callers that you trust the most. And Ohio State, to me, seems like the most complete team in college football. I mean, they are rock steady from what they were last year. And defensively, with the addition of Arvell Reese and the way that he's playing, he might be one of the most, pound for pound, one of the most talented players in all of college football. I'm doing NFL draft prep. Right now, you can make a pretty convincing argument that Arvell Reese is a top 3 most talented player in the NFL draft. People will scoff at that. I think in April that's going to show up. He's going to be a top 10 pick for sure. Bona fide. But Ohio State, the way that they have played, have they had that major test yet? Maybe not, but every opponent that they have faced until this point is reflective of doing what a team in their position is expected to do. And the quarterback has gotten confident and confident and confident week in and week out. And then you look at that receiving core and you're like, holy moly. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, embarrassment of riches. Bo Jackson on the ground. If you're a team that doesn't have quarterback mobility, which Ohio State does not, then that means the environment around you almost has to be nearly perfect. Ohio State has that. That's a needle that not a lot of teams can thread. Ohio State can do that. They have one of the best front offices in the country. And in terms of the alignment that they have between their head coach and their GM, it's one of the best. They can get away with it. Number 2, I have Indiana. The alignment of what they've identified in their locker room in terms of coachable assets in their players and guys that fit their system. Like it's like Fernando Mendoza might as well be Kurt Signetti out there playing quarterback. Seriously. I mean, the way that he processes the game, the timing, the anticipation, the accuracy, the ball placement, the effectiveness that these guys play. Indiana, I said, is arguably the most well-coached team in the country. That's why they went to Eugene and beat Oregon, a team that was, let's be honest, more talented than them. And it doesn't mean that Indiana doesn't have talent. It just means that the execution level that Indiana is playing with right now is insane. Defensively, I love watching them play. They're so assignment sound. They're one of the best open field tackling groups in the country. I love Indiana. And there are other teams out there that you don't want to face when they get hot. Ohio State was one of those teams last year. They're a two-loss team. Guess what? They turned it on when it matters, and then they ran to a national championship. Oregon, one of those teams right now. Hey, humble pie against Indiana. That's all right. Let's get back to business. They handled their business against Rutgers. Alabama loses against Florida State. What do great teams do? They get better and better every week. They instill confidence. There's not a hotter quarterback in the country right now than Ty Simpson, maybe other than Fernando Mendoza. Ty Simpson gives Alabama a shot every week. And the way that he plays allows Alabama to continue to develop positions along their defense as well. Young guys getting reps. Yanze Pierre playing at a high level. James Smith playing at a high level. Alabama starting to feel like Kalen DeBoer's version of Alabama. That's what I like about Alabama and Kalen DeBoer. The weird thing about college football is they lose the Florida State game, and then from there it's like identity crisis. Who are we? You know what? Let's stop trying to be someone else's program. Let's stop trying to be the Alabama of the overlords of college football when Nick Saban was running the show. Let's be Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, and let's go build that identity, and let's establish that week in and week out. And credit Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and Kane Womack and the job that they've done. Give a lot of credit to Courtney Morgan as well. They've stayed the course in the faces of the headwind. And their team has rewarded them with belief, confidence, and development week in and week out. Alabama, for sure, is one of the most dangerous teams in college football. The other team I mentioned, Oregon. They got it all, man. And when I went back and I watched that Indiana game, I thought the 6 sacks that they gave up, 3 or 4 of them were on Dante Moore, and I actually thought they ran the ball well, especially on the interior against Indiana, which was an advantage. Their ability to run the football, establish both sides of the line of scrimmage, going to keep Oregon in it. And their coach, I've talked about it at length. You guys know how much I love and respect Dan Lanning. All right, 2 teams out. Georgia. I mentioned it earlier with Ole Miss. Georgia and Kirby Smart, I talk about the emulation of your head coach. You're just a reflection of your head coach. Georgia does not blink. If you're going to beat Georgia, you're going to have to go 12 rounds, lick for lick, and you're going to have to earn it. The only team that was capable of doing that this year, ironically, was Alabama and Kalen DeBoer. Georgia, once again, behind their quarterback, gritty as hell. Mike Bobo, another guy that's been challenged, both by media narrative, by fan base at Georgia. They show up big, man. It reminded me of 2014 Alabama when I worked there. And it's like you start winning these games and they're ugly, and now you got to outscore Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. And it's, we gave up, 500 yards and 35-plus points. It's not our standard. Trust me, I don't think Kirby Smart likes giving up as many yards as they gave up to Lane Kiffin. I don't think he likes giving up touchdowns on their first 5 possessions. I don't think he likes that. I know what he does like. The W. I think he likes that a lot. And Kirby Smart, that's what you preach, man. We talk about fourth quarter program, 60-minute program. Fourth quarter program that was instilled by Nick Saban at Alabama. Kirby has taken that from a psychological standpoint, and he's done a very difficult thing, and he's been able to emulate that in Athens. And when things get tough, those dogs, they just get stronger, man. They they live for the deep end of the pool. They're sick like that. Some sick puppies. And Gunnar Stockton, overlooked, undersized. I was one of his biggest critics, man. One of his biggest critics coming out because he wasn't pretty and he wasn't 6'3". And guess Georgia's had all those dudes, by the way. They had Jacob Eason, they had Justin Fields, and it's Stetson Bennett and Gunnar Stockton at the end of the day. That seemed like the most effective guys that fit that program. Once again, 2 guys emulate their head coach, chip on their shoulder. And if you're Lane, I don't think you had a better shot at UGA than what you had this past weekend. And fourth quarter, it was like, let's go. Do not blink. Head coach, resiliency of this team, that gives them a chance. Georgia, another team I would not want to play. A&M, okay, who I'm still getting a feel on. Studied them earlier in the season. I thought the win in South Bend was so freaking gutsy. I thought they were going to be challenged by Florida. They really weren't. Toe-to-toe with Arkansas, we expected that game to kind of get a little wonky. Interim head coach Bobby Petrino is going to give you everything that he had. Defensively, I know they want to play better, but they have the talent to continue to improve. And guess what? Marcel Reed has been everything that you would hope he would be under Colin Klein. Not turning the ball over, playing very effective, can get it done on the ground, and still getting better week to week as a passer. Those are the teams, man. Teams I'm talking about find a way to win. They're talented teams that are capable of winning ugly. That's a differentiator. So those are my 6. If I had to pick a national champion, they would come out of that group, right? So let me reiterate. Ohio State, Indiana, Alabama, Oregon, Georgia, Texas A&M. I think other teams that can get it going, and then all of a sudden we're talking about them very quickly again. Miami, margin of error is slim. They got to put it together. But Miami, when they're playing their best ball, they're a factor. Oklahoma, a healthy Mateer, that defense, Ben Arbuckle. They got to play better, but the way they bounce back against South Carolina, hell yeah, man. That's what I'm talking about. John Mateer in the playoffs, would not want to see him. So those are my wild cards. Notre Dame would be another team. Nice gutsy win over USC. I like Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's a playoff team. Do they have what it takes to get back to the national championship this year? Probably not. Marcus Freeman, stud. Mike Denbrock, stud. They missed that guy down at LSU. Last thing I want to say, Kalen DeBoer, 19-3 against ranked teams, best record all time. Bama, 4 straight AP wins. It's just funny, man, because the first week of the season, you're like, this guy's not it. The fit's wonky. The narrative changes so quickly. It changes so quickly. Kalen DeBoer, I will make the example of, is a good football coach. He has won everywhere that he has been. I admit it. The fit there was a little bit wonky, but it seems like that turbulence that they have gone through will only sharpen them going forward. It seems like it's only made them better. And as long as they have that quarterback, as long as they have a Ty Simpson, as long as they have a Keelan Russell, as long as they have a Michael Penix, I'm good, man. Courtney can continue doing his thing. Alabama's going to be in it. They're a dangerous team. So there you have it. Top 4 teams of the country. The Fab Four is kind of what I'll call them. We'll keep an eye on those guys. Should be a heck of a college football playoff this year. And with that, it's time for our first mailbag, which fires me up. We got 2 questions. One of them I'll go a little bit more in depth on. The other one, more coaching search focus. But before we do that, guys, make sure to like and subscribe to Coop's Corner at the Cooper Petagna YouTube channel, youtube.com/CoopsPetag. Also, wherever you find your podcast. Not going to say it again. Hey, if I see you in person, you tell me you're a crony. Happened last weekend. Had a buddy of mine says, hey, listen to all your shows. Said, you like and subscribe? Said, no. Said, all right, man. Let's go out back. I'm going to have to give you a noogie. Is it noogie or nookie? All right. Mailbag questions. Here we go. First one, Ryan on X. He says, what are your favorite coach to school connections? LSU, Florida, Florida State, Arkansas, Penn State. So I'm assuming, Ryan, that you're asking, what are my favorite coaches in connection with some of the potential job availabilities here? LSU, I'll circle back in a second. Florida, since it's open, let's start there. I talked about it at the beginning of the show. I think the fit is blatant. I think it's going to happen. I think it's Lane Kiffin. I dished on it earlier in the show. Gave you everything I got, but I think that just makes too much sense. Florida State. Rumblings out of Tallahassee, especially given the track record here lately over the last 2 years for Mike Norvell. In the ACC, they lose to Stanford out in Palo Alto. Believe it or not, tough place to play because there's nobody in the stands. Hard place to get fired up, and that's a long flight home. Mike Norvell, in my opinion, out at the end of the season. What does Florida State do? This is an attractive job for a lot of different reasons, man. I mean, same reason Florida's attractive, Florida State's attractive. And you're in the ACC, so you talk about a path there. Clemson's down. ACC's kind of getting reshuffled. Georgia Tech looks like they could be the team that comes out of there, maybe SMU. So if you're FSU, this is a job that's a good job to sell. Didn't mention Miami as well. I think the names that come up for me would probably be Alex Golish. Now, at South Florida, if you're Florida State, can they go to the Group of 5 ranks again after swinging and missing on Norvell? They had some success. I don't know. I think there's probably some hesitation there. I think the guy that makes sense is Kenny Dillingham, who is an alum of Arizona State, but he worked at Florida State. Got some stuff to him, you know? Dillingham, to me, would seem to be the guy because I think he's in constant fundraising mode at Arizona State. And as much as he wants to turn that place into a legitimate year-to-year contender, which, one, I think he's capable of. If you give him enough time, he'll do that. But two, he can look at Florida State and say, job's a little bit different. So I'll go Dillingham there. Arkansas, Rhett Lashley has been obviously connected to that job. If you're Rhett Lashley, I mean, SMU just went into Clemson and beat him by 11 points, I think. I'm not leaving. SMU is willing to give him whatever he wants. Contractually, investment-wise, I'm good, man. I'm with the Stangs. I'm in the ACC. I'm good. So if he's out, who's the next guy? I actually think, depending on what Virginia Tech does, I think the James Franklin marriage here in Fayetteville kind of makes some sense because Franklin is a process, high-floor type of coach, and he did it at Vanderbilt. He's cut his teeth in the SEC. It's a lot different game than it was when he was in Nashville. But this guy's got cachet. And I think at Arkansas, maybe it's an opportunity for him, a little bit less pressure to go out and rewrite some wrongs that he had at Penn State. And, Arkansas is a tough job. I think in order to learn from your mistakes, you need a little bit of time to be able to sit back and reflect on them. I don't know if it's the right job for him, but I find it pretty intriguing. And for Arkansas, for obvious reasons, you're getting a guy that's a proven winner. I think this one would be a coup. Penn State, a lot of different names that come up here. I think at this point, Signetti's out. I think Matt Rule would probably go, but given the fact that we're looking at Matt Rule, they lose to Minnesota on the road. In Nebraska, it feels very James Franklin-esque. It feels like you're just replacing one problem with a similar one. Process, program builder. Penn State's not in process mode. They're in Florida mode. Okay, that's win now. Let's balance both. We want our guy for the next 10 years, but we want to be competitive from the jump. So how do you thread that needle? Elko, a name that's been thrown out there from New Jersey, seems like that type of fit. I don't know if there's a home run here for Penn State. Eli Drinkwitz has been thrown out. That one would be certainly fascinating, but I would caution him. I think Missouri's a better job for him, just given the expectation at Penn State. Clark Lee, to me, makes a lot of sense here, and I don't think he'd do it. So this is where Penn State, it's like, all right, we're gone from Franklin. Signetti re-ups. I can't sell Matt Rule to the fan base. Drink decides he wants to stay. What do I got? And to me, it's like, all right, I'm Clark Lee, Brent Key. And you're going to have to poach one of these guys from the school that they went to and played at. I mean, good luck. It's tough. Nebraska, I think Matt Campbell would make a lot of sense. Another process program builder. I think he'd do well there in Lincoln. Is it a home run? No, but you're looking at a guy 9 wins in the Big Ten. It depends what you want if you're Nebraska. Tulane, if John Summerall were to go somewhere, I think Blake Baker would be the guy, defense coordinator at LSU. Iowa State, if Matt Campbell were to go somewhere, how about Spencer Danielson at Boise State? Good fit. Don't think he'd do it, but that would be the guy that I would be calling. Great question, Ryan on X. Okay. Last question here. Sad Tiger fan. How does Brian Kelly keep getting away with this? Sad Tiger fan, also known as my friend Jack Zarang, he texted me this question about 5 seconds after I tweeted it. And if you don't know what Jack is talking about, he's talking about Brian Kelly being 5-10 against ranked opponents since he has arrived on campus in Baton Rouge. It's always LSU, guys. We always end up on LSU. But I think LSU is in a interesting spot between Scott Woodward and Brian Kelly because this is the marriage that they have chosen. In the previous question I was asked who would be the fit for LSU, I legitimately do not know. I don't know. And on previous episodes, I have talked about the administrative hand-holding from Scott Woodward that has been required under Brian Kelly. And earlier in the show, I also talked about how I think we're going to see names in college football emerge for head coaching vacancies that have a strong offense or defensive prowess with the upside to develop as a CEO. Lane Kiffin, obviously offensive-minded. Dan Lanning, defensive-minded. Kirby Smart, defensive-minded. Signetti, offensive-minded. These are all guys with really, really strong backgrounds. Brian Kelly's been a head coach for 35 years and been a proven winner. But the record against top-ranked teams was an issue at Notre Dame, and it's an issue at LSU. And this is a top 5 roster in the country. Brian Kelly's making $10 million a year, and Ole Miss is a legitimate college football playoff contender. So is Vanderbilt. That being said, the expectation at LSU is to win national championships. We've seen that with Orgeron. We've seen that with Les Miles. We've seen that with Nick Saban. So I can understand where Scott Woodward was thinking, well, if Orgeron can do it, catch lightning in a bottle, I could probably do it with Brian Kelly. The issue is that the game has changed. And week to week, you're still looking for that advantage. I mentioned the 60-minute psychological advantage with Georgia. I mentioned the offensive creativity with Lane Kiffin. You're just looking for an advantage week to week that says, I don't have to be perfect. right? We don't have to be perfect because my coach gives us an opportunity to win. LSU, outcoached by Vanderbilt and Clark Lee. LSU, outcoached by Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Two teams vastly more talented than. Couldn't get it done. Also said this too. We're going to look up one day. We're going to look at this LSU roster, and they're going to be guys that are playing a lot better football than what they ever showed in college at the NFL level. And you're going to wonder, how'd they squander that? So I think LSU is stuck with Brian Kelly. I know that sounds morbid, very negative and pessimistic. But what I think is going to happen here, if I just had to put on my tinfoil hat, is that LSU will go 9-4, and they'll make a change at offensive coordinator. They'll make a change at offensive line. Scott Woodward will once again be very involved with going out and spending a lot of money on the next best offensive mind in college football, along with the offensive line coach. And it's really not a talent thing at the offensive line, but there were some stones that they left unturned, in my opinion, with throwing out Tyree Adams and Weston Davis and to protect Garrett Nussmeier, who has been an enigma this year. I have no idea how to even evaluate him. I have no idea how banged up he is. I don't know where he's at just in terms of his level of trust in the offense or the protection. It's always been something. And then you hear Brian Kelly, in his post-game pressers. I mean, he owns it. He says, we got to execute. We didn't execute. Vandy executed. Ole Miss executed. You're getting paid to execute. You're getting paid to get these guys to execute at a high level. And if they execute, they do the things that you coach them to do, you're an undefeated team. But if it's not one thing, it's the other, right? I mean, if the defense is playing well, we can't run the ball, right? If we run the ball, we can't protect the quarterback. If we effectively get back in the game offensively, our defense can't stop anybody. And it's that week-to-week type of thing where you ask yourself that question, if you're LSU fan, like, what are you adding to the team? I said this a couple of weeks ago. What is it that you add to the team? If your team's not executing and you were brought here to bring a higher level of discipline and execution, and your team's not doing that, then what are you getting paid for? Because Austin Thomas and his group are handling the talent acquisition side. Blake Baker, for the most part, has done his job defensively. Same with Corey Raymond. What are you doing? What value are you adding? You can't run the ball. You can't develop offensive line play at LSU. You can't put together an effective passing game with Garrett Nussmeier and all those weapons you have. What are you doing? And on top of it, when you do go make changes in the offseason, somebody else is going to make those hires for you. So what is it that you were doing? Last thing here. I expect LSU to address all the symptoms of their issues except the main one. And I'm not advising LSU to make a change at head coach. I'm just saying, to be a CEO in today's college football, you have to have a level of critical thinking and thinking ahead and putting people around you that get it and that understand it and that can cover your blind spots. And LSU is constantly working to cover Brian Kelly's blind spots. And one or two can sink you. And they had two this year. Play calling, offensive line. And who's the dude to challenge you to say, Coach, hey, man, we got to win this year? I don't know. Listen, if Tyree Adams or Weston Davis goes and beats out one of these proven tackles that we bring in and, we spend 1.2 on, so be it. That's a good problem for us. Oh, we're good. No, you're not, and those are legitimate teams that they lost to, but the expectation at LSU is to win. And, the other thing, I don't know if it means anything or not. It's just me as an observer. LSU is not an enjoyable brand of football to consume. I went to that South Carolina game, ugly, not fun, not enjoyable. It's like, how do we just get out of here with a win? Florida, same way. They're the same team that they were week 1 against Clemson. And Clemson's not a good team. But we got fooled on all that. So, yeah, LSU, Brian Kelly stuck with each other. And, I think it's 9-4, 10-3, see, maybe they can make the playoffs. Not this year. They're not good enough. And they don't have a coach that really kind of inspires confidence in these guys week to week. Like I don't see a swaggy LSU team that plays fast and loose, that when they show up in the road in Nashville and they're a dog to that team, they got a chip on their shoulder and they got something to prove. And if you can't see me on camera right now, I'm shaking my head. LSU needs a fire breather, and those guys are really hard to find. And, I'm not saying press eject, but for 3.5 years, I've been saying, all right, let's see it, let's see it, let's see it. This is the year to see it. And there's 2 losses midway through October, and it's like, all right, I'm getting to the point where we've collected enough data. Got a pretty good feel on this, which way it's going. And you can change everything around him, but at some point it just kind of is what it is. All right, guys, great show. College football. I mean, I'll tell you what, ramping up. The other thing that's ramping up, the transfer portal. Overseeing that at 24/7 Sports, that thing is a beast. And when the portal ramps up and all these names are jumping in, you're trying to figure out if your team's involved. I am your guy. I am your dude. I promise you, I am your dude. There's nobody in the world, I think, and if there is, no disrespect, consuming more transfer portal tape than me. So if you have questions on players that have entered the transfer portal, potential portal guys, their fit, all of it, let me know. Also, I have my first NFL mock draft coming out next week. Excited on that. A lot of work to do this week, a lot of tape to catch up on. But we'll have a video breaking that all down on Coop's Corner. So, guys, I appreciate it. As always, like I said, make sure to like and subscribe to Coop's Corner on YouTube, all the socials as well. You guys have been awesome. Remember, we have that goal. We're trying to meet 300. All right, so whether you're on YouTube or podcast, make sure to leave a rating and a review. That helps keep the show free. That helps keep this thing going. And it helps build my confidence as well. So, guys, let's lock in. Let's have a great week. And I appreciate you guys listening to Coop's Corner.